Thanks, everybody. So my name is MJ Maloof. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer here at Kelvin. And here we're going to talk about the industrial system of action. We talk about a system of action to differentiate versus systems of record. And I'm going to talk about why that's important and the challenge that we face. So why is it that industrial teams struggle to move from insight to action? The first part of it is siloed data. There's a huge amount, a massive amount of data between OT systems, IT systems, and often locked in the heads of great engineers and operators as tribal knowledge. And those data sources often don't intersect or not in a systemic way. And that's the first part of the problem. And when we talk about those engineers and operators, they're not all created equal. So we also have human variability. When we look at interventions and optimizations, there's significant difference in experience, but also perspective. And that leads into inconsistent results when we actually get into physical operations. Another piece of that is how do we measure that consistency? So outcome verification or impact measurement is incredibly important. And often actions are taken without figuring out what that, in a quantifiable way, delivered for the enterprise. Finally, we're still stuck with a lot of manual implementation. So there's lots of systems that will surface insight, make recommendations, but you're still dependent on a person to decide to put that action into play. And the net result is that insights don't become action, and decisions vary by operator, by shift, by site. So how do we look to solve this problem at Kelvin? We organize action into a cycle. It starts with an event. Event can be a discrete variation, or it can be a series of events, or candidly an opportunity for optimization. That event is brought to the attention or sought out by an operator and becomes an insight. We bring the relevant data sources together, and I'll talk more about how we do that, to leverage the best of AI, machine learning, and human understanding to say, hey, this is what's going on, and then this is what I want to do about it, the action piece. So we act on that insight in the physical world, primarily through the OT systems delivering closed-loop control changes, but not exclusively. There's plenty of stuff in the operational environment, whether it's manufacturing, resource extraction, energy, where you can't fix it with a keyboard, you got to go fix it with a wrench. We want to be able to address both of those kinds of actions. And then the next piece is super important, measurement. We want to understand the impact of every action that we take. And that's how we sort of bring it back into a full cycle. When we can understand and quantify, particularly the impact on the bottom line of the enterprise, what these actions, whether there's optimizations or interventions, are doing, then we can get smarter, we can get better, and we can continue to improve. So how do we do this? Kelvin's built in sort of three distinct layers. The first one is the foundation, the connectors. Connectors translate and move data, and they bring context. The foundation of that data at Kelvin is streaming OT data. So the time series information that's coming from your OT architecture. So that can be your SCADA system, or it can go all the way down to PLCs and RTUs. We have a whole library of native connectors to bring that data in. And then we also bring additional context. So when you think about what a great engineer does, they're often looking at, yes, that's streaming data. And sometimes that's enough, but more often than not, they're relying on their experience. They're also relying on things like information from the ERP system to know the maintenance history of a particular piece of equipment. Or static documents that have things like power curves, vessel capacity, all of the other things that they need to make a real-world decision. That flows up into our engines level. So engines are where we have a deterministic layer that ensures things like data quality, so when we're bringing all that data in, but also guardrails, so that when we're writing control changes back, we're doing so safely and robustly. The deterministic layer is really critical because while there are a lot of exciting things we can do with agentic tools, in most circumstances, operationally, we don't want to take probabilistic solutions to deterministic problems. So having an engines layer where deterministic control is acted upon creates reliability, robustness, and safety. Finally, this rolls up to agents. So agents are about supplementing and giving human operators effectively superpowers. The mantra we think about at Kelvin is, what does your best engineer do on their best day? And how do we scale them so that they're across all of your assets at once? Agents are effectively collections of tasks and skills that can take action in the real world. Let me talk about sort of what that looks like in practical terms. So in this example, we have an agent. The agent has access to a variety of assets that's connected to via the OT system. It has tasks, which are opportunities for action that the agent can complete either in a human-in-the-loop or in a closed-loop fashion. And it also has skills, the ability to read a PNID, the ability to read a PDF, access to internal documentation. So agents have objectives. What are we trying to do? The ability to execute, intelligence, right, from all of that context and all of the data that we're bringing it, the ability to measure the impact of the actions taken, and then skills as well as MCP connections to connect to all of your data sources. This lives sort of on a spectrum from everything that we call, agent in the room, which is sort of expertise. Can I talk to my agent to understand what's going on with my facility, with my data? Human in the loop, where we've got prescribed actions that can be automated, but need to be evaluated by a human operator before they're implemented. And finally, full closed loop implementation, so truly autonomous. I want to dig in on the human in the loop piece because there are 3 really important contexts in which we use our human in the loop framework. So the first is a practical matter about autonomous operations is that change management is really hard. Technology is part of the problem, but the other part of the problem is change management. And a big part of what we want to do is build trust with these agents, the actions, and the tasks. So in many cases, when we're implementing closed-loop control, we start with human in the loop. We have operators verify that, yes, that's what I would do, and I've approved 100 out of the last 100 changes. I'm ready to migrate this to a closed-loop implementation. As part of that, we provide meaningful transparency. So every time there's a recommendation, it comes with evidence. That evidence can be data, it can be charts, it can be iframes from other systems. We're bringing all of the context that a human operator would need to know to act on something, and then they can approve that change. Now, in certain cases, we're using ML for those models, and that's the second scenario where we use human in the loop because we're training those models. So we have confidence intervals. Not all decisions are created equal. Sometimes it's a yes, no, but sometimes it's, yeah, that's a really great decision, or no, that's an okay decision, I think you can do better. And again, this is a relatively short-term phenomenon where once we've trained a model that's ready to migrate to closed loop, it moves into that closed loop implementation. There's a third scenario we talk about where that human in the loop is persistent, and that's for high consequence decisions. The reality is there are some things that we never want to fully automate. We want to partially automate. We might have a procedure where there's a critical safety check or a very high consequence action that we still want a human being overseeing, and those things are going to persist long term. But then we get into sort of the closed loop piece, and these can be incredibly simple, rules-based things, or highly complex models that have learning and improvement and work at a network scale. So how do we bring this down to earth? Let's give you a real-world example. This is a company, Iron Oak Energy Solutions, and they make sand. Fascinating business, but when you're producing what is essentially dirt, it has to be cheaper than dirt. You have to have incredible operational efficiency to drive margins. In this case, the transfer of the sand mines to the processing, so it's slurry mined sand, which means it's really wet. It goes into a distillation tower, and then it's divided into a series of dryers. And those dryers basically have to get the sand dry enough that it can go through material characterization, i.e. size separation, before it can be packaged and ultimately distributed and sold. The challenge that they were experiencing was significant variability, operator to operator, shift to shift. Now, there's inherent variability in the process itself because you see variation in the moisture level of the sand, both in terms of how it's coming out of the ground, how it's stored, how it's transported. The problem with that, beyond inefficiency and yield on CapEx in each dryer, you also have situations where the process will crash, right? Because there's too much moisture, and then you end up with, again, lost time, but also lost product. The solution was taking all of their OT data, applying a machine learning model that uncovered non-intuitive process interactions. So while we know that moisture is what's driving the physics here, inlet moisture measurements were not actually correlated to results. What was correlated was exhaust temp and product exit temp. And when we started to see those diverging, we knew we were about to experience a crash. So we built a machine learning model that we implemented in closed loop where it would push process and increase rate up until the point where we start to see that divergence and then dial back. The net impact was a minimum yield of at least 10%, and in practice we saw up to 17%. So for a low margin company that's producing sand, this translates to, across the facility, $1 million a day in profit impact. We were also able to prevent waste by 5%, right? So anytime that sand comes out too hot, we're using that heat, or sorry, not hot enough. We're using heat as a proxy for dryness. So if the sand is sub-temperature, it goes to waste, it's too clumpy, can't be sieved, can't be used. And that basically means, again, not just loss of productivity, but also time and energy for people to move that wasted sand around. So significant result here, and now we've expanded beyond sort of this unit or local optimization into broader plant-wide optimization, looking at the entire process and the interactions of the whole system to optimize. In terms of how we work with AWS and why we're better together, we bring agents, we bring tasks, we bring the SME know-how into repeatable automation at scale. We're also bringing real-time, closed-loop automation, the ability to do control. Again, not just a recommendation, but a real-time action. And we also have the necessary IT and OT connectivity so that we have really, really robust data. And again, those deterministic engines to make sure that the data coming in is safe and robust, as well as our ability to write back in a way that's consistent with the best practices of the organization. And why do we work with AWS? AWS brings us a lot of different options in terms of the enterprise tools that our customers need. So that's VPCs, PSaaS opportunities, secure, reliable, and scalable tools. Everything from Outpost to Sitewise, SageMaker for model building. There's a whole series of tools that our customers who use AWS are able to leverage with Kelvin. And that enterprise governance and security is really critical to those applications. So in summary, action starts with shared meaning across OT, IT, and engineering. It's not enough to have data coming out of one of these systems. You have to bring it all together because that's how our best operators are making decisions. We have to have deterministic engines and governed agents to make sure that these processes are safe and reliable. And with AWS, we can scale these systems from a site to a fleet, operating in a region, a state, or on a global basis, and be mingling that data so that we can learn from plant to plant and extend those lessons across an entire enterprise. So if this sounds interesting to you, please come visit us. We're back to the left. We're in booth 35. We'd love to show you the depth of this product by getting into a demo and show you real-world case studies of how we do everything from build tasks to complex agents that can, again, give superpowers to your human operators. We'd love to figure out if there's an opportunity for you to do a pilot with us and see if this provides the ROI that we've historically been able to deliver. Thank you so much.